Cool. So yeah, so my name is Nima. I'm an associate teaching professor in the computer science and engineering department. I do a lot of work with the DBMI folks. So for folks on the panel, DBMI, that's the Department of Biomedical Informatics. It's the program that's running the summer internship that we have. So for the first part of today's career workshop, we have an academia versus industry panel. So I'm sure a lot of you kind of heard from some of the talks, you've met some of the people that do research here, and there's kind of these different career trajectories of like, do I want to maybe go down the academic route where maybe I'm going to do a PhD and then pursue a faculty position, do research for a living? Do I want to go into industry and then maybe work at a company and do something? Do I want a research position in industry? Kind of all these different career paths, but you might not know, how do you pick between all these options? So today's panel, I have a bunch of folks that will be kind of coming from different perspectives and going to be, I have some questions pre-prepared, but then if there's any specific questions that you all have, we can kind of go into those. So maybe just to start, maybe I'll have the panelists introduce themselves. So maybe I'll have Mateo go first, just because he's physically in the room, so that'll be a good sanity check that everything's working.
Hi, my name is Mateo Antonio.
Yeah, Mateo's over there. Oh, like for you, I guess you guys could look at him on here too, but he's also physically right there.
I'm an assistant professor here in DBMI. I started my lab 1.5 years ago, and I work on genome-wide association studies and polygenic discourse in diverse ethnics populations.
Awesome. Thank you. And then maybe I'm just going to go in the order that I see on my screen. So maybe Jens, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Sure. My name's Jens. I'm a postdoc in Vineet Bafna's lab in the computer science department. I was previously a bioinformatics PhD student at UC San Diego. And I work on developing methods to detect extrachromosomal DNA. These are circular pieces of DNA that arise in cancer genomes. So we use DNA sequencing data to identify them and resolve their structures.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Ian. Thanks for joining us. Maybe Aaron, do you want to go next? And I'm going to mess with the lights a little bit, so I'm still here, but feel free to go, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Aaron. I probably gave a lecture to some of you guys last week, at least to some of the interns there. I'm a current PhD student in Shamim Namadi's lab. That's part of the bioinformatics program in the DBMI department. Before that, long before that, I worked at Genentech for a couple of years in operations before moving over to Illumina, where I was a senior engineer. Then I worked in clinical trial consulting for a little bit, kind of like, small to mid-sized pharma and preparing their statistical results for submission to the FDA. And then I decided to basically, tank my whole career and then do a PhD. And that's where I'm at now.
I think I turned off too many lights, but I'll mess with it later. Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Thanks for joining us. Sun, do you want to go next? Oh, I think you're muted. You might still be, if you hit spacebar, I think it should. Or I guess you're on your phone. There might be like a, oh, there we go.
Hello,
Yeah,
hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Sun. I was in the DBMI from 3 years, from 2012 to 2015, and then before that I had no idea about industry. So most of the time, I think about more than 10 years, nearly 10 years. I'm fully in academia, and then I joined Kaiser Permanente. In industry. So right now it's about 7 years, and and my role is a lead architect, and my expertise is on natural language processing, and we have a team to develop the product to working on the electric health record for Kaiser Permanente in Southern California. So thank you for having me. Glad to join.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Celeste, do you want to go next?
Hello, my name is Celeste Bean. I am a senior hardware engineer at Sony Interactive Entertainment, better known as PlayStation, in our research and development department. So I have absolutely nothing to do with bioinformatics, but I know Nima and I like Nima. So that's why I'm here. As far as what I do in my day-to-day, it's a lot of designing printed circuit boards. I do some machine learning, thinking about novel human-computer interaction for games and digital media. And as far as my education, I went to UC Santa Barbara for my undergrad in computer engineering, did a 5+1. in electrical engineering, switched that into a master's thesis, switched that into a PhD, dropped out of the PhD, went to industry because I was broke, and then did a part-time master's while I was working. So I'm happy to talk if anyone wants to talk about kind of going up and down and up and down. And that's me.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, a lot of good information that I'm definitely gonna poke out a little bit and get some insights from you. Thank you. Tim, do you want to go? Actually, Tim, you're not on the panel, but you can be on the panel if you want. Or are you just listening in?
Listening in, and then yes, I just want to say hi everyone. Yeah, we had like a summer internship symposium in the morning, so I'm really appreciate everyone for joining the panel. But then yeah, for now I won't disturb everyone for just listening.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for checking in, Tim. Awesome. And then last but not least, Sally, do you want to introduce yourself all the way from Japan?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm probably representing more the clinical side. I'm Sally Baxter. I did my undergrad at Duke and then a master's in public health, actually over at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Came back to the States and did med school at Penn, and then to UCSD for my residency training in ophthalmology, followed by an NLM postdoc fellowship with DBMI. And then I stayed on. I'm now an assistant professor of ophthalmology and have a joint appointment in DBMI. And I split my time between clinical work, mostly in general ophthalmology, doing cataract surgery and so forth, and then research, which is the majority of my time in predictive modeling, and also looking at various health IT interventions for things like clinical decision support and risk stratification for patients, particularly in glaucoma and diabetic retinopathy. And then, Nima mentioned I'm in Japan as a little bit of a atypical situation, but I'm also a spouse of an active duty military member, and we're stationed in Japan temporarily. So I'm working from here, which is one of the benefits of doing informatics. I think it's amenable to working from anywhere. So happy to talk to any of you who might be interested in sort of physician scientist path.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for joining us. And yeah, thanks for putting up with the, I'm sure, insane time zone difference.
This is not bad.
Perfect. So I have some pre-prepared questions that I'll start with, and then, definitely if there's anything that kind of piques your interest, feel free to join in. So I guess just to kind of get things kicked off, maybe we can have each person just kind of give a little bit of insights about like, what were some of the decisions that led you to where you are right now? So I know a lot of folks mentioned kind of different levels of their education and different experiences they had, but kind of what were the decisions that you made? What were the kind of the pros and cons that you kind of contemplated each step? I don't really have a set order, so I don't know if anyone's especially passionate. Feel free to, you can either raise your hand and I can unmute you, or you can just jump right in. Or
I'm happy to start with a quick, for my end, I don't know how relevant it is to the intern group here, but, when you finish clinical training, there's always a question of, do you want to do academic medicine versus go into private practice or purely clinical work? And for me, I was really interested in research and continuing to, be able to do that as part of my job. And it is harder to do that if you are, out in private practice. And so that was a big push towards staying in academics. And one thing I will mention is that a lot of physicians in academic medicine do consult for industry. So it doesn't have to be an either or decision in some cases. Like I think that people think of them as very separate realms, but actually, if you are in academic medicine, for sure, like a lot of the tools that we use, the medicines that we give, they do, these various companies do look to, at least in the clinical realm, physicians are a huge part of helping to consult and give input so that these products are the most useful for patient care. Of course, you have to manage all the conflict of interest type things, but anyway, I'm just putting that out there as an example of, that they don't have to be, totally separate realms, and there are ways to be involved in industry collaborations or consultancies, even if you're in academics.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Sally. Awesome. And I saw Celeste, you raised your hand. I don't know if you wanted to jump in next or.
Yeah, maybe the first comment I'll make is on the decision as to whether or not you go into academia or graduate school, whatever kind of scope you want to immediately after undergrad, and some of the considerations there. I think one of the benefits, right, of going from undergrad straight into graduate school is you don't disrupt anything, you maintain all of the study habits, you haven't been making any money, so you're not used to making any money, so that hurts less. And a lot of times you might consider staying at your undergraduate institution if that's something that you're interested in. So that was kind of part of the consideration for me. Was I went to UC Santa Barbara for undergraduate. I stayed for my 5+1. And part of the reason I decided to do that was because I was already in the UC Santa Barbara ecosystem. I had teachers who were willing to take me on as a teaching assistant, so everything was paid for. So that was a big consideration as for me staying at my undergraduate institution. However, I think the shortcoming of going into academia straight from undergraduate is you don't fully have the context of industry or where things are applying to know what's going to be relevant to your later career, or just broadly that scope that can help you determine what you're actually interested in. So for example, what I was doing for my failed PhD was looking at solar panel inverters, basically. And I got kind of 2 years through, I was doing a thesis-based master's at that point, and I was like, I did not know what I got into. I don't know if I want to do this for my career. And I think if I had taken a pause to go work and understand the industry better, I might have understood that. I wonder, Aaron, if you might have some interesting thoughts on that, having gone back to academia.
Couldn't agree more with Celeste there. I was actually going to chime in as well. So thanks for the handoff. Yeah, my bachelor's was chemical engineering. And so, you know, that was my focus. And I think if I had looked at a PhD right after undergrad, I would have gone into chemical engineering. And honestly, I think I would have hated it because when I got the experience in industry, I realized that just wasn't for me at all. And I made the hard shift into data science. So it was nice. I mean, it's a trade-off. I'm one of the older members of my cohort, not the oldest though. There's a huge age range of people that go in for PhDs. But I'm very focused on what I want out of it. I came in with a clear objective. I'm doing exactly what I want to do. There's no question in my mind that I'm studying the right things. And so having that focus has been really nice. So that's the trade-off.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you both. Yeah, great insights. Anyone else want to chime in, either Jens or Sun? No pressure.
Maybe I can.
Oh yeah, Matteo, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, well, I come from a very different background. I'm from Italy and I did a master in Denmark where I started doing some research. So after that, I decided I just wanted to do a PhD. And towards the end of the PhD, became my postdoc advisor in the talk. We went out to dinner, she interviewed me at dinner and she offered me a postdoc position after that. So I didn't even have to think about what to do. And I found this place here. Bay was great, San Diego is great. So I never even thought about moving to academia, and coming here on a J1 visa was not possible to go into industry until getting a green card. And now I'm a professor here and I love what I'm doing.
That's awesome. And yeah, congrats again. That's exciting. So it looks like maybe Antonio, Matteo, do you wanna sit closer to me? Then that might project better onto the microphone as well. Maybe straighten out this chair. Awesome. Yeah, thank you, folks. Cool. And then I don't know if Jens, if you want to as well, or.
Sure, yeah. I think one of the big deciding factors in going to graduate school is, for me, was having undergraduate research experience and knowing that I liked it, and interfacing with PhD students and postdocs while in undergraduate to see what their day-to-day life was like. Would I like that? And I think for me, the answer was, yeah, this is like, I enjoyed, doing this kind of research. And so that was, my decision to go to graduate school and pursue a PhD in bioinformatics. And then I think, there's, for me, the decision to stay as a postdoc is, about continuing and finishing up the work that I've been doing in my PhD. And, we build tools. And so, we have a vested interest in gathering users and having a community of users who know how to use those tools. So to kind of, get things to a point where it's not just a tool that is created in a lab and lives its entire life and dies in a lab, but one that goes out into the community and is used by other people, and has an effect on, doing research, that can take time. for me, that was something I was passionate about, seeing that through. And I think that it's, when you come out of graduate school or come out of academia and want to go into industry after that, which is something that I can see myself doing. It's, if you have a name for yourself as someone who does something or is the guy who did X, that's a good thing. That'll show up, people know who you are, and that can really help you as you transition, either staying in academia or going into industry.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you. Cool. So that was kind of just to set the stage. So just real quick, how many folks in the room are currently undergrads? Is it everyone? Okay. And then I saw Coral joined on Zoom. Are you also an undergrad? Is everyone undergrads in the program? Do you happen to know? They should be. Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Coral,
So-
she was my summer intern. She's an undergrad too.
Perfect. So I guess maybe the next question to kind of just generally give to the whole panel is, I know that in kind of going through undergrad, it feels like along this pathway, there's a lot of like, not really unspoken things, but there's like kind of opportunities that not everyone knows about that kind of, it's easy to miss if you're not really looking out for it. So I guess since everyone here is currently in undergrad, like what are some opportunities that you think folks should kind of keep an eye out for, either as a good experience or as a way of kind of opening their eyes to what they might want to do, or just anything in general, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I
Jens,
think-
go for it.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, maybe Jens and then Sally. I should probably do a better job.
I mean, just to reiterate, yeah, I mean, the importance of undergraduate research, I think, is can't be understated in helping people decide if they want to continue in academia. So yeah.
They're all
Yeah,
everybody
and,
doing it. Go for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I totally agree that doing research as an undergrad gives you some of that experience. But a lot of the research opportunities are going to be at universities. And so what you tend to see is, academic settings. Certainly, if you have an interest in industry, doing internships can be helpful. One program that I did as an undergrad that I thought was kind of interesting was a little bit about like a hybrid. It was the Amgen Scholars Program. So that's a summer research program. And the year I did it was actually the first year they ever had it, but they host it at different universities. So that summer I did it at Berkeley. So you're working with an academic mentor on mentored research this summer, similar to the DBMI summer internship program. But at least when they did it, when I did it, which was many, many years ago, they had this mid-summer symposium, and then they had scientists who are working at Amgen talk about like life in industry and kind of give a different perspective too. So that was kind of an interesting kind of hybrid where you got to work in an academic lab, but also got to meet like industry scientists and get that view while still being an undergrad. So that, all the industry side was definitely new to me then. And ultimately I didn't pursue that, but I think that it was a cool exposure to have. And so that's another opportunity. I think they're still running the program, so something to look out for. And they don't pay me, by the way.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, maybe Celeste, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so when I was an undergraduate, I did a program that, from everything I can tell, is still running, called the Science Undergraduate Laboratory Internship, which is associated with the Department of Energy. And basically what they do is they give you a stipend, paid hourly or whatever, associated with a whole bunch of different national labs. And so through that, when I was an undergraduate, I did 2 internships at Los Alamos National Lab, which is kind of fun because Oppenheimer's in the news and everything. And I'm like, ooh, I was there. Yeah, so it's a tiny little town in New Mexico, really cool place, but they have them all over the country, including Lawrence Livermore up in Northern California. And basically what it is you can kind of find someone who's working on things at these national labs. So for example, my first one was after my sophomore year of college, and I worked on basically modeling for theoretical biophysics. And then next summer I went back to do some quantum cryptography stuff, which was really cool because it was way more than I would have normally been working on. What did I know? I was, a junior in college. And I got to go work on that type of stuff, and then did another internship when I was in grad school with the Department of Energy at National Renewable Energy Lab in Golden, Colorado. So one thing to look at is national labs, both as internship opportunities, because they kind of tend to be a little bit easier to get into, to be totally honest, and is something that you might consider after academia, because they just have different kind of dynamics than maybe a university would, if you still want to be specifically in that academic world where you're publishing and doing kind of pure science type things. So I'll post that link in the chat for Suli.
Yeah, thank you. And then maybe I'll save all the links and then I'll send them out. Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, Son, yeah, go for it.
All right, yeah, I will really like for some internship and some program in academia. It's really helpful because I was in the BMI like for several years and I have some interns there. I do see really like freedoms and I have like exploring some new idea for in terms of like knowledge and something like really academia. But then when right now I'm in the Kaiser Permanente, we also have some interns there. But I do see a really difference in academia environment because some intern here in we have some intern here, so they really join in industry, so they really contribute on the some new feature on the real production. So I mean in the real production, I mean, and then they need to collaborate with the team. So I think and the industry like in our team actually we got a lot of like the high level engineering and other very different perspective. Like for me, I'm like NLP expertise only, but then you have the team of engineering, and inside that they have multiple disciplinary and also the medical doctor and something. So they can have some contribution, and so that they can learn and they can have some teamwork and how the team working. So I think that also helps some intern exploring and gain some more information in the real productions. And I do see kind of complement with the academia. So yeah, if you have a chance, so I mean, I really encouraging to explore this. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Anyone else on the panel? Any secret tips?
Well, maybe in general, I had some interns that just wrote emails to a lot of different professors, and if you find someone that does something that you're very interested in, just contact them, and that's the easiest thing to show interest in a lab and start doing some research during undergrad.
Awesome. Yeah, so it sounds like the resounding kind of advice is get some type of research experience, and then it might be in different venues, it might be at different laboratories. But yeah, the earlier you get an idea of kind of what is the actual work in the spaces, it's definitely helpful. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for your insights. So I have plenty more questions, but I do want to give everyone here a chance to, if you have any specific questions that you want to ask the panel, I want to give you an opportunity. So anyone in the audience, any kind of specific things you're curious about, want advice about?
I kind of have something for Celeste. Just because she said that she dropped out of like PhD and like went to industry. Like I don't know if it's like a personal question, but what kind of made you want to drop out of like PhD and like pursue industry instead? Just because like
No one's gonna like this answer. It's because I wanted some more money.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I wish I could give you a more profound answer than that, but it's because I was like, damn, Santa Barbara's expensive. That's why I did it.
Thank you.
Sorry, I interrupted. Sorry if I cut off the last part of your question.
No, it's okay. Like, because I'm kind of like debating whether I want to go into like PhD or like master's, but like, I don't know yet, because I know PhD is kind of expensive. So thank you.
And I'll give a slightly more kind of related to my earlier question or my earlier answer. I think I went into my graduate studies without really knowing exactly the context in which I wanted to work. I just knew that I enjoyed learning. I knew that I enjoyed a research environment, but to be honest, I think I chose my direction poorly and without enough outside information. And maybe something else I'd recommend there is if you are thinking about a PhD program, something I didn't understand as an undergraduate is that it's far less about the institution and far more about your advisor. This person, and I mean, the actual PhDs could probably comment on this better, but the advisor will kind of determine a lot of your life for basically 6 years of your most formative years. And I chose it based on my institution. I was already at Santa Barbara. I was like, I can see dolphins from the lab that I teach from. This is pretty cool. Which again, bad criteria for someone who's going to control your whole life. And I had a perfectly fine advisor, but some of my friends had different experiences. So choose your direction better than I did.
Okay, thank you.
So I think to kind of piggyback off of Celeste's answer, I think, and kind of piggybacking off the previous answers that everyone gave to the last question, I think that's kind of one of the key things about getting all these experiences. One thing is just learning cool stuff, but then the other thing is just seeing, is this the right fit for me? And by fit, it could be the topic, it could be, do I want to dedicate a job just to research? Like on the one hand, it's nice because I know San mentioned it's a lot more kind of open-ended and you can explore whatever you want, but on the other hand, it's a lot more open-ended, like no one's telling you what to do. So it's a little bit freaking out sometimes, like, you know, what am I actually supposed to be doing day to day? Versus like in industry jobs, even like some of the research ones, it's a little bit more grounded in like, here's a product or here's a general theme that we're kind of implementing towards. So I think if you ever do some type of an experience and you end up liking it, that's great. If you end up not liking it, that's also great. Negative information is super helpful information. Like, you know, this is kind of the goal of having such a diverse panel is like kind of getting different perspectives and seeing, you know, there's plenty of great opportunities all over the place. So finding something that fits for you is definitely the right approach. One thing I will say, so PhDs, you shouldn't be paying for them if it's in STEM. So just kind of a heads up. That being said, it's still like, you're not making a lot of money. It's very little money, like barely to pay the bills. So definitely like the money thing is not a non-trivial issue, but I want to make sure like folks don't think like you have to like pay for a PhD as you would with a master's. I know Celeste, when you finished early, kind of, you got something out of it. I want to maybe let you finish that story, but like, you mastered out, right? So you got a master's degree at the end of your yeah. So you could actually theoretically start a PhD. And then if you leave, some programs will give you a master's degree after you meet some certain qualifications. So awesome. Yeah, thanks, folks. So yeah, do whatever feels right for you. Awesome. Yeah, any other questions from folks in the audience? I have plenty more, but yeah, absolutely.
I guess some of my experience as an undergrad, I felt like I didn't get as much computer science as someone who was a pure computer science major, and like not as much biology as someone who is a pure biology major. So I'm just wondering what your guys' experience is kind of like navigating being at the like intersection between two really ginormous fields.
Panel, want to tackle that one? Being in the intersection of some interdisciplinary field. Yeah, Jens, go for it.
Yeah, so I guess I had maybe a similar undergraduate experience. My undergraduate was in applied math, and you know, I ended up working for an advisor who was primarily doing computer science and algorithm stuff. So of course I had taken some, you know, computer science classes and some of those important prerequisites. But you know, I'll say that the graduate level coursework was also very helpful in you know, expanding my knowledge of computer science and filling in gaps, or, you know, exposing me to new concepts. So it's, you know, you shouldn't feel like you need to know everything going into graduate school. There will be a lot of skills that you'll learn as you go. The classes, you know, you have a good degree of flexibility in terms of which electives you will take. And so you can pick those to, you know, fill in whatever areas of knowledge you want to fill in. As for the biology part, I started college as a biology major, I think because I knew I liked biologically based research. And then I realized that the best way to attack this was really to come at it from a computational perspective. And that the biology degree might not give me the skills that I needed to actually be successful. However, you know, there's that domain knowledge that's so important that comes along with studying a problem, where, you know, if you're going to have an impact, or if you're going to do some meaningful research, you need to actually really understand the biology very intimately in order to have an impact. And a lot of that has, you know, been able to develop that by talking to our biological collaborators and people who are doing the experiments. And they've helped me to better understand the biology. I would say, you know, it's the more biology you're able to take before you start graduate school in bioinformatics, the better. But I wouldn't say that it's something where, you know, you need to reach a certain level to feel like you're ready, because there will always be opportunities to learn more. the textbooks, so to speak, are still being written by, the research that we're doing. So I think there will be opportunities to learn more biology and more computer science. Just plan your electives accordingly, and yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, guys. That's excellent. Anyone else? Yeah, Son, go for it.
I would say from my experience, all my knowledge when I'm doing PhD is just experience, and we have to learn every day. So I would say like environment right now, it's completely interdisciplinary. So it means like, okay, we need to learn every day. We need to learn from everyone, and everyone is at each in they have their own their strength and learn like every day. So, but I mean, it's no worry. So we in industry like now, team we work as a teamwork, and the people like help each other, and I think that that's the thing I can share. So no, yeah, no.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
I'll just add that I echo that sentiment of like, you don't have to know everything right now. And that I actually was a biology major in college and did sort of pure biology because I knew I was pre-med and wanted to go to medical school. I didn't even know that informatics like existed as a field until I was in my last year of medical school. And then I did all my, clinical training and came back for my postdoc. And it was then when I learned programming. I mean, I had some statistical programming experience during my master's, like in SPSS, but it was very basic. And then didn't learn R or Python until I was like in my 30s. So I know when you're an undergrad, you feel like you need to know everything now, but you're gonna, be learning as you go. And I think there's also, whether you do academia or industry, grad school or not grad school, there's a constant cycle of learning that happens as you go. And, as several others have said, the field is changing. There's always new things happening. And so it really kind of changing your mindset to like a sort of continuous learning, I think makes it a little less nerve-wracking. And the older you get, you realize like whatever you majored in college actually isn't necessarily that relevant. As I think that's disappointing to hear probably when you're in the thick of it as a college student, but I think that's true. It's a continuous learning mindset throughout your life.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Sally. And Coral, I see your hand raised, so I'm gonna maybe go to Celeste first while we're on this question, but then I'll have you next for the next question. But yeah, Celeste, go for it.
Yeah, while we're kind of philosophizing on the learning and meta learning, I wanted to throw in some thoughts there because I have nothing to add on bioinformatics, but I think it was about my junior year of college when I realized that I was taking tests really well, just to be candid, but I had not learned anything. And I think it took me until that point to actually realize that I needed to change the way that I was processing information, internalizing it, and then being able to apply it to other situations. And just having that fundamental belief that I can learn something, even if it's from scratch, which I don't think I had that confidence. Maybe some of the people in the audience do already, but when I was maybe 21, 22, I was still learning how to learn things. So I think slightly more than trying to acquire all of the knowledge there is to exist about a possible subject, make sure that you're learning in a way that actually aligns with how you process information, because it might not be in the way that information is typically presented in schools, right? We have this kind of like very linear process that's kind of principle to application based, and it might be that you learn in a completely different format. So I think honoring the fact that people process information differently, whether it's just your personal preferences or maybe kind of your learning abilities, whatever it is, I think focusing a lot more on the confidence that you can learn than that you need to learn everything, and proving to others when you interview and things like that, that you can, aggregate and understand information more, I think is how I get over that insecurity. Because everyone has that insecurity. They don't know enough to do the job.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's great perspective. I'm just curious, like what is like one strategy that you have, since you mentioned that like you come up with like different learning techniques based on.
For me, there is not a single topic I have found that does not have some nice person on YouTube explaining it in great detail. And so I think one thing that's really been important for me is if, particularly for school, if I'm not understanding what a teacher or someone in a authority position is saying, go find it from another source. It might be that they're explaining it in a way that just doesn't work for you personally. It might not be, it might be they're not that great of a lecturer, but there's always alternatives to getting that information. Another thing for me is I really like reading. I find it a lot easier to process that than auditory information. Like lectures, someone talking at me, really hard to take in information. So I think going and looking and just not assuming that I don't understand the material, but rather that the material wasn't made for me is a strategy that I've found really helpful. And also not feeling dumb if I don't get it from the way someone's explaining it to me. Like it might just be, you know, not on the same wavelength.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I'll maybe like jump in as well, since everyone's kind of reflecting on what they've learned. I mean, yeah, for me, I started human bio as a pre-med, and then I kind of early on found that, oh, programming is kind of cool. So I switched majors to bioinformatics, not really knowing what it was. I was still pre-med. I took the MCAT, didn't do that good, applied to med school, didn't get in anywhere. Last minute decided, you know what, maybe I don't want to do medicine. Maybe I like want to do biomedical research, but something a little bit more computational. But in my undergrad major, I ended up switching to bioinformatics, and I felt like I did actually get like a decent computer science and a decent, like somewhat foundational biology background. And then I hit my PhD, and then I didn't really know what I was trying to study or kind of trying to pursue. And then the lab I ended up joining, my PhD project ended up becoming like super kind of like theoretical probability and theoretical statistics stuff that I had pretty much zero background in. So I kind of had to self-learn all of that. And then now I'm faculty, and then I've started collaborations with like some hardware acceleration labs, and I'm like, oh dang, I don't know anything about hardware and like low-level systems. So I've yet again continuously been learning. So yeah, lifelong learning, finding resources. I also look at nice people on YouTube to try to teach me things. There's also a lot of good courses on like, I don't know, Coursera, edX, like really good resources. So just, yeah, continuous learning is always good. Finding a system that works for you. Yeah, great question. So maybe Coral, yeah, go for it. You've had your hand up for a while. I want to make sure we get to you.
Hey
Please feel free.
guys, thank you.
Yeah.
I was wondering, for the people that are in the panel who are already like advisors themselves, what do you think makes a good advisor? And what advice do you have for students who are looking for like future advisors for like a PhD or any type of graduate studies in order to like find them? Because like personally me, like you only have like one interview where you try to figure out if the work that they're doing is something that you'd like to do, but you never really figure out if there'll be a good advisor until you're in the thick of it. So I don't know. That's something that really worries me when I'm applying to grad school. I'm like, what if I'm applying to this one university and there's like no PIs that will work for me? So yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. Absolutely. And I'm sure, you know, even the ones of us that have gone through the thick of it, we still kind of probably have stories about that type of situation that we were in ourselves. I don't know if anyone on the panel wants to tackle this one. Feel free to. I have an answer as well, but maybe I'll start this time. Oh yeah, go for it, Mateo. You're actually on the panel. I'm not, so I'll let you go.
Well, I think it depends on each person's character. So for me, it was, I wanted someone that's very hands-on, that can, you know, and they try to do the same with my students. If there's something we need to discuss, there's no need to set up meetings. We can just meet in the corridor or come into my office and we solve whatever issues we're having or whatever questions you have. But I also know that there are some other people that want more of a hands-off approach, where or there's a lot of PIs that have students working in, especially in big labs. There are students and postdocs that work together in a team and maybe meet with the PI once a month. And those still work great. There are a lot of great publications, a lot of great experiences. It's just mostly what your character is.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else in the panel? I have an answer as well, but I want to give other folks an opportunity. Maybe I'll jump in first, and then that'll get some creative juices flowing. So I think, kind of to piggyback off what Mateo said, I think, yeah, definitely the first step before you can even gauge, will this be a good fit, is, yeah, kind of recognizing yourself and recognizing what are your values in the workplace. So like, so Jens was one of my PhD colleagues, and then another person in our PhD program, a guy named Bill. Me and Bill have like polar opposite work strategies, where I love flexibility and I love just kind of having weekly checkpoints of, oh, get this stuff done whenever you want. But I don't want anyone kind of watching over me day by day. I don't want any expectations of kind of physically being somewhere. I just kind of like doing stuff at my own pace. And Bill was like the polar opposite of that, where he likes showing up at 9 a.m., leaving at 4 p.m. And then once you're gone, like everything fits within that workday. So his lab that he joined ended up being perfect for that. It was very structured and kind of, they had an expectation of like people were at their desks during the day, and kind of, it was very, rigid and like structured, which fit him very well. I would have hated that. And then for me, like my PI was also a little bit more hands off. So then it worked out very well for me. So yeah, kind of your work style is important. Some general patterns that might be things to have in mind beforehand, which this stuff is stuff that you probably find on the internet if you just Google the professors before you meet with them, is like, as Mateo mentioned, some of the bigger labs, you might not actually meet with the PI very frequently. It might be that like some of the really, really big labs at UCSD, it's like almost like a company where there's the PI, but then there's like maybe multiple postdocs and staff scientists. And then maybe under them, there's a lot of PhD students, and then kind of you meet with the PI maybe like once a week or something like that. And Celeste, I'd add that a lot of this is great advice for identifying managers and standard. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So even in the workplace, even in industry, in standard jobs, this the same type of thought process. But yeah, so getting a feel for like, do you like hands-on mentorship? Do you like more hands-off mentorship? In a bigger lab, you're going to get a lot less space time with the advisor, versus in a smaller lab, you'll maybe get a little bit more intimate, kind of maybe more regular meetings or a lot more kind of attention. And then just like personality, which then this is the hardest one. You can't really look it up beforehand, but sometimes you just don't vibe with people, which is totally fine. I did depending on the program that you're in, you might do rotations. So in the bioinformatics program at UCSD, there's like a rotation system that you rotate in 3 separate labs. And for me, like one of my rotations, the research was interesting, the stuff was pretty cool, but I just did not vibe with the PI, which like not his problem. I'm also kind of weird. So it, just not a good match of personalities. So for stuff like that, I don't really know how you could tackle that in advance. Hopefully, depending on the program, there's like a rotation system. I would recommend, definitely if you choose to go the PhD route, when you're applying for PhD programs, like look into programs that maybe have a good number of professors in whatever general research area you're interested in. So then that way, if there is a rotation system where like, fingers crossed it's a good fit, but worst case scenario, something doesn't pan out, it's easier to kind of switch labs if there's other folks that are working on things that you're interested in. Rather than like, if you go to a relatively small university and like there's only one person in that university that does this research topic, then it's a little bit harder of a situation. So as much due diligence research in advance about like who they are, what they work on, all that stuff. And last thing, I think talking to past students and current students might also be a good strategy. So just like get a feel for like, oh, hey, how is the dynamic in the lab? Like you've been in there for a couple of years. Can you talk to me about it? Something like that. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on this. If they didn't ramble too long. Yeah, Aaron, go for it. Yeah,
maybe just to follow up on that, Nima, that's the classic advice is, reach out to the current grad students or previous grad students, ask for their experience. Just one maybe tip I would give is make sure to read into the clue words. Like if they say really high expectations, that might sound like really nice, but that's a clue for you. So and there's a bunch of things like that where they might not openly criticize their PI, but they're suggesting it to you. So just make sure you read into that properly.
The blink twice if you need help or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from folks? Awesome. Any follow-ups, Coral? Just because I can't physically see you, so I want to make sure that if this stemmed anything else.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi is pretty bad, so if I turn on my computer, Zoom will kick me off. But yeah, this was really helpful. Thank you guys. The finding a university that has like several PIs that work in the areas, like really good advice. So thank you guys, all of you.
problem. And I mean, even the kind of industry parallel is like, you know, if you're gonna move somewhere, maybe move somewhere that there's a few companies that do the type of thing that you do. So like if you're in tech, maybe San Diego, Bay Area, Washington, like Seattle area, these are like great places where if this company ends up not panning out, there's plenty of other places you could apply for, so. we would love-
Okay,
cool.
cool. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the great question. Anyone else in the audience? We have, I think, like, how much more time do we have? We have like 15 more minutes, yeah. Questions from anyone in the audience? No? Okay, I can jump back in. So you know, we got to pick everyone's brains a little bit about kind of like what was your path here? What is some just kind of hidden advice that you would give folks? Now we've talked about like how do you kind of map out what type of maybe work situation you get, maybe how do you figure out what type of mentorship you want, all that stuff. I guess maybe a more silly question is like, is there anything along your path to wherever you are now that maybe you didn't expect that you would end up pursuing, but just kind of plopped out of nowhere and you ended up going for? Like what was something unexpected that ended up being like surprisingly influential to what got you to where you are today? Maybe that's a vague question, but and I guess maybe I'll start to give like a little bit of context. So now I'm an associate teaching professor in the computer science and engineering department. I teach a lot of big computer science classes. I do bioinformatics research, but I didn't know I wanted to do any of this until my freshman year of undergrad. One of my roommates was taking the intro programming class, and like he had to do a programming assignment where they had to draw their names with turtles. And I was like, whoa, I want to take that class. Like, what is this? And then that kind of made me switch majors to whatever had the pre-med requirements and also that one class, and then end up working out really well. So yeah, I guess go Turtles. But yeah, any situations like that, or are all you better planners than I am? Which could be likely. Yes, let's go for it.
So I have two things. One is that I got into engineering because I was studying economics my freshman year of college because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And both of my parents were certified public accountants. So I was like, this is familiar. And my freshman year roommate was studying computer engineering and I thought her classes seemed cooler. So it was very similar that basically to Nima, that basically the grass looked greener and it turned out to be a good fit. I think another thing, so it's maybe kind of embarrassing, but it really is part of my canon story. When I got to school, didn't really think I was super technically inclined or anything like that. But when I look back at my childhood, the thing I was obsessed with was Neopets, which maybe is a little too old for a lot of people in the audience, but basically it's I'm not even gonna describe what it is. It's an online thing where you have a fake pet. And I remember what I really enjoyed doing as a kid was I wanted to make money on Neopets. And so I coded websites for people's pets. And so I look back to my kind of origin story as doing computer programming and stuff. And I look back to the things that really, where I got lost in it in childhood. And now I have used those to kind of determine what tasks I want to do in my every day-to-day job. So I think in terms of figuring out what you want to actually do with your degree, right? Because there's a million things you can do with either a bioinformatics degree or an engineering degree, whether you want to do the technical work, whether you want to do program management work, whether you want to do recruiting, whether you want to do consulting, there's a bunch of things you can do with that degree. And I think in thinking about what you're going to be spending 40 hours a week actually doing, it can be helpful to reflect on what did you get lost in, especially as a child. So for me, my embarrassing thing is that it was Neopets. That's what I got lost in as a child, but I'm sure everyone has their thing. That was my unexpected.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, my Neopet is probably dead by now. Do they die? I haven't fed it in like decades. Oh, oh yeah, thank you for sharing. That's awesome. Actually, just real quick, just because you went over it fast, but I really want to emphasize, it didn't come up until just now, but I really want to second that whole like try to get a good idea of what you want to do day to day. I feel like we're always so focused on like what topic we're interested in, but for me as faculty, I lecture a little bit and then I write a lot of emails and then I do a lot of paperwork, and I actually don't do as much research as I thought I was doing back in the when I was first getting into this. It's a calendar notification. Maybe that's my computer. Oh yeah, it is my computer. Whoops. But yeah, like really, talk to people that are in the jobs that you're interested in, like get a feel for, what do you do in the 40-hour work week? Like, what does the day-to-day look like? I think that's a super helpful piece of information. in addition to the whole Neopets and, finding your spark and everything. Yeah, that's awesome. Anyone else on the panel? Okay, I have one more question, and I realize I should have timed it earlier because it's a little bit more solemn, and I don't like leaving on a solemn note, but maybe it can be uplifting, I don't know. So everyone in this room, all of us on the panel, everyone, I'm sure all of us have like failed at some point in our lives. And I think, when you're a professor or like you're a mentor, or you're established, you have this like lengthy CV or resume or whatever that shows all your accomplishments, but people don't really see the things that you failed at, the things that maybe you didn't get, or you just, I don't know, any kind of hurdle. So I guess anyone on the panel, like maybe if you're willing to share, and no pressure, but like, what are some kind of hurdles that you face throughout your life, and kind of how do you handle situations where you run into failure? Like, how did you handle that hurdle? Like, what advice would you have for folks as they go on their trajectory? And, not to discourage anyone, but inevitably roadblocks will happen. So kind of how did you get over them, or what advice would you have for folks?
Well, in academia, it's every time you get results from a grant or a paper.
Oh yeah.
Well, at least in the NIH, there's like
show off my. Oh, you
10-20% success rate for a grant. So you have to write as much as you can to just get one funded, and most of the times you have to write it multiple times, and so you never have to take what reviewers say about your work personally. It's just, even if sometimes it's hard, you just need to take it as, okay, they just tell me everything that needs to be done to improve the project proposal I'm writing, or the paper that I'm writing. But yeah, learning how to not take these things personally is always hard, and it's frustrating sometimes.
Absolutely. And just real quick, I'll highlight. So here's my like research grants folder. Here's the awarded one. There's like 8 or something. And then here is the rejected folder, which is like much longer. And then even worse is my applying for jobs. Let's see, where is it? Professor Saab. Shoot. I forgot where I put it. Maybe it's over here. Yeah, let me show you my apply. Yeah, professor jobs. I'm super organized. So in this spreadsheet, like the only quote unquote good option is purple. That's when I got invited for an interview. Rejected means they had the courtesy of telling me that they didn't accept me. Green means I didn't even hear back. So I'm assuming I'm rejected because it's been 5 years. So you'll see here, like, there's a lot of red. So blue also is not good. That means I submitted and never heard back. There's very little purple, which is the good stuff, but that's totally fine. You just don't take it to heart. All you need is the one person that says yes. So, if you apply for stuff, don't feel bad if you don't get it the first time, the second time, the third time, the 10th time, how many did I do? The 59th time. Like, just keep applying, and all you need is one that works. So yeah, absolutely. I hard agree. Try to figure out how to like not take rejection personally. It happens to everyone.
Yeah, I love that visual, Nima. I think one thing, because I was going through that too when I was a postdoc and applying for grants, and like every single one was rejected, and it was really hard to take it, but not take it personally. But then once I started getting grants, and then I was on NIH study section and on the other side of the table, you realize like how subjective the process is, and that it really sometimes is just a game of Russian roulette as to what mood the reviewer was in that day, and who's like going to be more vocal when you discuss applications. It can shift the scores a totally different direction. And I have a distinct memory when I was a postdoc in the grant writing class in DBMI. I remember that Lucilla shared a grant, and of course at that point in her career. So for the interns who don't know, Lucilla Ono Machado is like a giant in informatics. She was our former chair, and she's moved, and now she's like a dean at Yale. But she had gotten like $100 million in grant funding from NIH and other sources over a 10-year period of time, and was like, obviously phenomenally successful. But even for the grant writing course, she shared a grant that had just been submitted in the prior year or two, maybe, that was triaged and not even discussed. And so I think that was really nice, because oftentimes you'll have mentors or supervisors where you're like, wow, they're so amazing. How could I ever compare to that? They are so successful. And you can get this false idea that, you know, everybody who has been successful hasn't gotten the kind of rejections that you've gotten. But for someone so senior to share, you know, something that didn't even get scored, and even for people who are very successful overall, you can saw moments of these rejections, and that really helped put things in perspective for me. And so definitely at my stage now, you know, there's going to be a mix of things that get accepted and things that don't. And it's easier to do, but I think when you're a student, you tend to take it more personally, but just realize that it happens to everybody.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Sally. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, Son, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think failure is very often I see during DBMI, but my recommendation of success is to take the failure as an experience and nothing lose, because we gain from this, we learn from this, and we can reuse this and improve this. I think that's also like a part of the continuous learning, as the people in the panel mentioned. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
I would share, so my kind of path to how I got to PlayStation was after I finished up grad school, I went to Arizona and I was in part of this kind of special ops of this manufacturing company where basically we would do rapid prototyping to try and get these projects onto our manufacturing lines and build for that business. I got to work on a ton of really interesting projects, blah, 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 blah. That's usually how I tell the story. What really happened, and then, you know, that I switched it to more research stuff, but I had all this experience with manufacturing and the practical side of engineering. But what really happened is I kind of got bait and switched on a job. I took a job that was supposed to be all of these basically research things for manufacturing. I got there 3 months later, they said, oops, job changed. I had already moved my stuff out. And I said, I guess we're living in Phoenix now. And with that, I think there's kind of 2 lessons that I've taken away from it. One of which is about narratives, which is basically that you have the narrative that you tell everyone else, which you can fluff up as much as you want. And my dad's Australian and his favorite phrase is never let the truth get in the way of a good story. So, you know, you can absolutely make a narrative that suits whatever you want it to be. And people are going to only know what you tell them. That's kind of the external narrative. And then the internal narrative is how you get through whatever it is yourself. So I think it's the fact that you can kind of make the story what you want it to be. And you know, like, don't lie, but maybe you don't have to be too honest. And I think the second point is that whatever stage you're at does not determine the trajectory of the rest of your life. I remember, you know, this is my first formal job out of school, and I was comparing myself to a lot of my friends who were making eye-watering amounts of money at, you know, Facebook, whatever, and feeling like maybe I had kind of messed up, maybe made a grave misstep. And now I'm at a job that I love that kind of scratches all of my itches. So I think also allowing that nothing is ever determined. You can always change what you want to do, and you can make the story whatever you want, both externally and internally. That's my feelings on failure and missteps.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Absolutely. Cool. So I think we're pretty much right at 2:30. We have like 1 more minute. I don't know if there's a last minute insight from the panel that they want to, any 1 minute wisdom? No. Cool. Well, yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It's been great having you on. You know, I'm sure the students really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Great job, everybody.